as candidates or as voters.
As UWONET, we thought we couldn't sit back. We documented the instances of violence against women in elections, and we came up with a document that we then presented to Parliament to say that, you can't, what is a free and fair election? If women are being beaten and violated, they can't exercise their right if they fear that if they have that fear or if they actually get violated. So I think the contribution of the network has been to raise those gendered aspects, those issues that either impede women from casting their vote or impede women even from standing for elections, because there were also, instances where women candidates themselves were violated. There was fear of rape, of being beaten. So the network has raised those issues and has put them on the agenda to be discussed, I think, as never before.
The constitutional review process brought to light and informed a number of women's human rights concerns that are undermining the intents and purpose of the recently promulgated supreme law of the land, the 1995 Constitution.
One of the things that I worked passionately on was the constitutional review process. And I think at that time there was still this sense of the Constitution as a sacred document, as a document that we could rally around and use to deliver on women's rights. It was a document we used, for example, to file the first case to challenge laws that were discriminatory against women. We filed a challenge to the Divorce Act because it was discriminatory. We filed a challenge to the Succession Act. So that was the time that we thought and truly believed the Constitution meant something. If you have a Constitution that gives you rights, but you have a leadership that will not implement that Constitution, then you see how it creates a gap. And who suffers? It's the men and women of Uganda. And so that's why I said, the fight is harder now, not only to keep what we have, but to ensure that what we have is respected. The name and letter, spirit of the Constitution must be respected.
Marriage and divorce has been a long-time issue of contention as well as a notorious source of gender-based violence, dating as far back as the mid-1950s, when the Young Wives Association initiated the advocacy to demand for the registration of all marriages in the country.
It is the sincere belief of the women of the Uganda Protectorate that they should aim at securing their own position in society so as to improve their status.
UWONET's active participation in the campaign on domestic relations contributed to the realization of a constitutional framework on marriage and divorce.
Because then we shall use that to challenge property laws and inheritance laws, credit regulations, and so on. It will be those separate accounts, they call them satellite accounts. Once they are there, they will give us that argument we need to empower women.
We are people who are in partnership, both men and women, and out of that process, we have had actually men who are saying for them they are now sisters, they are now men who can be able to speak out on behalf of women. And I think for me that is very unifying. Whether it's at the grassroots, whether it's at the national level, we have men who can ably speak out on behalf of women.
We can divorce, but if the family name has been made and you are called Tina Turner or you are called Mrs. Batman, it means a lot to the world. Shouldn't you go away with that name? Do you need to go and begin at zero as if you have had no background? So equality at marriage, during marriage, and at its dissolution is a very important constitutional framework.
Continuous advocacy engagements associated with domestic violence incidents like the Shama Cookie and Candida judicial procedures, the demonstration at the Italian embassy in Uganda related to a violent rape case in Italy were important in influencing the realization of the Domestic Violence Act 2010.
They'll talk about protecting the institution of marriage, but not protecting those who make the marriage. And that's what we advocated for, that domestic violence shouldn't be limited to physical violence or to the most commonly known sexual violence. No. For the first time, we are defining domestic violence to constitute and include economic abuse. Economic abuse is very important for the women to control resources.
That's what identifies us from other groups, okay? So why we come up with gender is when we see a gap. Okay?
In more recent times, the network has stepped up its advocacy for the advancement of women by working closely with duty bearers in improving the quality of response to cases of gender-based violence through training and provision of material support.
With the duty bearers, if they gain these skills, at the end of the day, they will go down and inculcate them in their daily experiences and their daily work. For instance, we have policemen and women on board. We have local councillors. We have women leaders in the area or in the region. The people who are always facing daily face-to-face with cases of gender-based violence.
Women of northern Uganda experienced deep levels of violence handed down at them by the warring parties at the height of the northern Uganda insurgency. It is for this reason that UWONET rallied voices of Ugandan women across the country to demand for a peaceful resolution to the conflict.
When the women took the peace torch, the women came up with their own protocols on all those issues that had been discussed. And it is that biggest lesson and contribution by UWONET when most of those recommendations that were in those protocols afterwards were the key components of the agreement that was signed by the government of Uganda and the representatives of Konyi. So what you see is a contribution, even the peace, is a contribution of UWONET and the women from the national level and at the grassroots level to say this is what we want. This is the roadmap that we want as women of Uganda.